Hi. Nano sent me along these stereo mixers, their new ST MAR module, to have a play around with and explore some patches. But the addition of one feature has turned this into a very interesting, fun little module, which I have been coming up with all sorts of crazy patches. And that's the addition of this CV input per channel. You have two inputs per channel, left and right, left normals to right, as you'd normally expect. You have a volume attenuator per channel, a master out attenuator. You've got a nice little clipping LED here if you're going over levels, and you've got a LED to show you whether you've got a signal or not, and then you've got a stereo pair coming out here. So pretty standard in terms of mixer features. The CV and mute switches are here per channel. Mute's handy, it's a clickless mute. I mean, the switch clicks, but there's no click I could hear on the audio, which allows you to mute in and out the signal. And the CV allows you to exert CV control over the level of that channel. If you plug in a jack here to the CV channel and send in a voltage, this knob now becomes an attenuator. The CV inputs mean you can use this as an accent generator for your drums. You can glitch up drum beats. You can send in envelopes and turn it into sort of a stereo VCA to mix together multiple different oscillators. You could use it, for example, to route multiple oscillators to different effects units, or route one oscillator to multiple different effects units. So it's actually a fairly useful tool to have in your patch. Just want to thank Nano for sending these two to me. They sent them to me to do the video on. They didn't pay me, but I got the modules for free. Okay, let's get started with some patches. Right, we'll start with the very basic, straightforward example. Let's just patch in some oscillators. We've got plats here, which I'm going to patch into channel 1. So we'll take two outputs there from the main and the aux output into channel 1. I'll take pizza because this has multiple outputs. So we'll take again main and the octave oscillator into the output on the right. Now I've muted all the channels, so we're not going to hear anything. And finally, I have the lovely Instro TSL. So we'll take the square wave output here, and maybe, I don't know, the triangle output there. Okay, now it's just a simple matter of patching the output here. I'll put it into this channel on my mini mix, which is going to be my master output mixer here. Okay, so now when we turn down the levels on everything, we'll just turn up the master. I'll unmute these and we'll be able to hear them. Okay, so there's the level control for the first one, level control on the second one, level control on the third one. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is we can actually sequence all of this. If we have CV inputs, we can send in all sorts of different patterns to mix these sounds together. We could use a gate output, for example. Here we could patch that into each channel. So I'm going to take the first three button outputs here of my Klacking Keypad, turn up the attenuator. These each will send a 5-volt signal. Now when I press the buttons, that's not exactly going to win any awards if I do that by hand. Oop, quite new down there. But of course, we could patch the output of a sequencer into the CV inputs. I'll just patch clock from palms. I'm going to use it for a couple of different things. I'm going to mult it up into here, and we'll just patch this clock into the clock input over here of this sequencer. Now you can see fairly clearly. So obviously we can straight away have a bit of fun with just like sequencing this by sending in different sequence triggers. Then you can mess around with the sequencer, have a bit of fun. In this patch, let's look at using the ST MAR as a beat slicer. What do I mean by that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some loops out of my squid sample here. And what we're going to do is feed those into the ST MAR, and we're going to use that in conjunction with some rhythmic triggers out of Pam's Pro Workout over here to slice up the beats. I'll get this patched up real quick. We've got 3 different loops going to come out here on the 3 separate outputs. So I will patch them into the 3 channels on this ST MAR over here. All the channels are active and we've got all the CV modulation up. As before, I'll just patch the output here into the stereo output over here. Now when I go into, say, for example, channel 1, press play, you hear this sample loop playing. And if I go in and look at the loop, it's set to loop gate mode. Loop gate mode on Squid Sample means only play the loop when the gate is triggered. And the reason I set all three of these to gate mode was I wanted to have them all be synchronized in their start time. What I'll do is I'll use output 8 here on PAMS to this mult over here, and then I'm going to mult each of these to the gate inputs for channels 1, 3, and 5, because that's where I've loaded up my samples. 1, 3, and 5. Now that means channel 8 is a special mode on PAMS. If we just zip down to it here real quick, it's set to gate mode, which means whenever the PAMS is turned on, it's high, and these guys are looping, so they're all in sync now. And if we turn on our mixer, first of all, let's do some manual beat slicing. So we'll take the output here manually from each of these three channels on Klacking Keypad. Now, Klacking Keypad, the output is normaled to 5 volts if nothing is plugged into the input. And so now when we press the key, now, I'm not anyway skilled as a beat slicer. I'm not any good at tapping out rhythms. Of course, I can also take rhythmic LFOs from PAMS, and we'll just feed those into each of these three channels and then use the keys to actually gate playing the rhythms. Let's try that. I might want to speed them up a little bit. And you know, if you go into PAMS, of course, you can always set things like probability. So we can skip a few. I'll come back around here to 6. And what I've noticed is if you set the wave shape on PAMS Pro to be this kind of triangle, ramp up, ramp down, it's a little bit smoother because it kind of smooths out the transitions a little bit rather than just have it be a gate. One last thing I want to show you, building on the same idea, is of course you don't have to use manual gate triggers to open up the channels on the ST MAR. We could also use LFOs like, for example, Batumi, which I've set over here into clock divider mode. So when I hit play, we now are slicing based on divisions of the LFO speed. I can speed it up or slow it down. Now you notice when I speed it up, we get that kind of ring multiplier effect, which gives us an idea for another patch, which we'll try next. I'm going to show you a slightly weird example of a patch I came up with using the ST MAR, and this is where I send audio rate CV into the CV input, turning it into, I suppose, a ring multiplier, but I don't actually think it's a ring multiplier. It's probably just more amplitude modulation really going on. So what I'm going to do first of all is we'll start with a fairly basic patch setup here, and just to talk you through so we don't have to look at me patching cables. Basic sequencer here, quantizer in Ornament and Crime, driving the Instro TSL over here as a voice, and if we just turn on the you got a fairly simple pattern going on there, a sequence going on, a little bit of a filter, and a delay. Okay. But what I want to do is I'm going to take two LFOs. One of them here I'm going to take from this channel of the low stepper, which, by the way, is a fantastic little, I wouldn't call it little, but it's a fantastic LFO, dual LFO that can be clock synced, can be reset synced, and can run at everything from low frequencies, very slow frequencies, to audio rates, but you can also morph the waveforms. So it's actually really, really fun to play with. So I'll just turn it onto slow mode at first, and we'll just open up the channels. And here we just hear the two channels opening up and turn, which is not exactly that exciting. We turn on the clock and we're now going to clock sync it, so I'll turn it up to medium speed. Okay, so now we're jumping between the two channels back and forward. Now we go up into faster speed. Now we start to dial up into audio rate. Morph the waveform. We can trim the start and end of the LFO waveform, so we're wave shaping the LFO waveform now. Now we have a really interesting sound coming out, so we can... Let's get some filtering going on here. We got a bit of drive going on, a little bit of drive. Get the delay up. Here's an example where it gets kind of noisy, but what I'm doing is I'm going to dial up the out and auxiliary oscillators from Platts in to be the modulators here. So we'll just turn on the very simple sine wave output from TSL so we get kind of the bass melody. And now let's take a listen to when we dial up these two oscillators here. Noisy, but kind of fun. Not what I expected out of a stereo mixer. Let's try some other patches. Now let's look at a way of using the ST MAR as a multi-effects router, basically turning the stereo mixer into a stereo router. And what I want to do here is take one oscillator, and in this case I'll use Platts, and I want to route it to 3 different effects. I'm going to route it to 3 different filters. You notice I have 3 delays and I've got 3 filters. I'm going to mult the output of Platts into this multiplicand here from Making Sound Machines. Now this is a very nice feature that it can be configured as 2 dual stereo setups, or it can all sum into one, but it's a buffered mult so you won't lose any signal. So what we'll do is we'll take one stereo output here and we'll route these 3 to 3 different filters. And then we'll take each of those filter outputs, route them into the 3 inputs here onto the ST MAR, and then use CV to choose which of the 3 filters we're listening to at any point in time. So let's get this patched up. Now let's test that we've got it all patched up correctly. So Platts is oscillating away happily to itself there. Let's just take a listen to cuts. Okay, lovely. The carry. It's a little bit loud. I'll just dial that one down so it sits okay in the mix. Fine. And Q pass. Each of these filters has their own unique character. So now we have 3 different filters patched to the inputs, and now we can use CV to select between them. We can just use some LFOs, for example, to select between them. So I'll patch the LFOs here from low stepper again into these ones here, and we can just turn on the one of the things I want to be able to do is modulation, so I'm going to modulate the frequency, of course. And I've decided, of course, that this needs a little bit of delay, so I'm going to patch the output of my STMR into the input of my basal over here, and I can easily patch the output of the basal delay, which is a fantastic delay with a lot of funky features, into the mixer. Off we go over here. A few more taps. Of course, we could also send the output of a trigger sequencer. Well, that gives you some ideas of how you can use STMAR. It's a stereo mixer with a few twists in it that gives it a lot of fun playability. I was actually surprised at how many patch examples I was able to come up with just sitting down one afternoon and using it in a different set of configurations. As always, I love hearing from you, so if you want to leave some comment down below, I appreciate it. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.